The night the blizzard swallowed the canyon, the cowboy thought he was coming to rescue two stranded sisters. But as the cold crept into his bones and the wind began to howl like something alive, he realized the truth far too late. The storm hadn't brought him to save them. It had brought him to be saved by them, and by a history he never knew he was running from. "Shut up, cowboy. You're freezing. You're sleeping between us tonight." The words cut through the wind sharper than any knife, and Elias Mercer hated that his knees almost buckled with relief when he heard them. Snow slammed sideways across the high desert, turning the world into a white blur. Elias had ridden into the canyon at dusk, chasing a half-forgotten promise and a lead that wasn't supposed to take him this far off the map. By nightfall, his horse was gone, the trail erased, and the cold had begun to gnaw at him in a way that felt personal, like the land itself was testing him. He'd followed the faint glow of firelight like a desperate man follows prayer, and that's how he'd stumbled into the sisters' camp. Tala and Naya Redbird stood shoulder to shoulder beneath a battered canvas lean-to, dark hair braided tight against the storm, eyes sharp and unafraid. They didn't reach for weapons when they saw him. They didn't flinch. They simply measured him, as if deciding whether the night would take him or spare him. "You don't look like a man who plans ahead," Tala had said, voice calm, almost amused. "And you look like you're about to die," Naya added, already pulling him toward the fire. As the temperature dropped even further, the sisters pressed him down between them beneath thick wool blankets. Their bodies radiated warmth earned through generations of surviving nights like this. Elias lay stiff at first, pride fighting instinct, until his shivering became too violent to hide. "Easy," Tala murmured. "The cold feeds on fear." Elias stared up at the low, shaking roof of the shelter and felt something unfamiliar loosen in his chest. He'd been running for years, running from a failed ranch, from his father's bitter voice, from the guilt of leaving land that had never truly been his to begin with. He had thought himself strong because he endured alone. But alone, he would have frozen tonight. As the wind roared, Naya began to speak. Not loudly, not to fill silence, but like someone talking to the land itself. She told a story of ancestors who listened to storms, who survived by respecting what could not be conquered. Her voice wove through the night, steady and grounding. Elias didn't realize he was crying until Tala brushed a tear from his temple. "Sleep," she said. "The storm decides nothing tonight." And as his eyes finally closed, Elias felt something shift. Not just the cold retreating, but the old belief that survival meant standing apart. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, between two sisters who owed him nothing, he lived. Elias woke to silence, so complete it rang in his ears. Sunlight spilled across the snow like forgiveness, and for a moment he forgot where he was, forgot the storm, forgot the fear. Then he felt the steady breathing on either side of him and remembered everything. Tala was already awake, staring out at the canyon as if reading messages written in stone. Naya slept lightly, one hand resting over the blanket like she might catch the day if it tried to leave too quickly. "You made it," Tala said quietly. "That means the land accepted you." Elias sat up slowly, joints aching but alive. The storm had stripped the world bare, revealing cliffs and sky in brutal clarity. There was no trail, no horse, no easy way back to the life he'd known. "I don't even know where to start," he admitted. Naya opened her eyes then, smiling faintly. "That's usually the right place." They shared food, simple and warm, and talked as the sun climbed higher. Elias told them why he'd come, about the ranch sold out from under his family, about the papers he'd found proving the land once belonged to the Redbird line, taken through lies and silence. He'd come looking for answers, but deep down, he'd been looking for absolution. Tala listened without interruption. When he finished, she nodded once. "Land remembers," she said. "But people forget. That's where the pain begins." The sisters didn't ask him to fix the past. They didn't demand promises. They asked only that he stop running, that he carry the truth back with him, that he speak it even when it cost him comfort. When it was time to part, Tala placed a hand over his heart. Naya pressed a small braided cord into his palm. "So you remember how warmth is shared," she said. Elias walked out of the canyon on foot, slower than he'd arrived, but steadier. The cold no longer frightened him. He understood now that strength wasn't isolation. It was connection, respect, and the courage to stay present when the storm came. The journey back took 2 days. Elias moved slowly, every step a reminder of how close he'd come to disappearing into the white silence. The braided cord Naya had given him was wrapped around his wrist now, the fibers rough, grounding. Each time doubt crept in, he touched it like a promise. The land changed as he walked. Snow thinned into frost, frost into bare earth. With every mile, memories he'd buried rose up, his father standing at the fence line, hat low over his eyes, saying that the land didn't forgive mistakes. Elias had believed that meant weakness was unforgivable. Now he wondered if his father had simply been afraid to admit he needed help too. By the time Elias reached the edge of town, rumors had already begun to spread. People noticed a man who walked differently, who looked at the ground not as something to claim, but something to listen to. Old friends asked where his horse was. "I lost it," he said, and for the first time, he didn't feel ashamed of that truth. That night, he opened the old documents again, the land deeds, the signatures, the crooked lines of history. The fire crackled as he read, and the words felt heavier now that he knew the faces behind them. Tala's voice echoed in his mind. The land remembers. So would he. The meeting hall was full. Ranchers, town elders, young families. People who had inherited comfort without ever asking where it came from. Elias stood at the front, hands steady despite the weight pressing on his chest. This land was never just dirt and fences, he said. Murmurs rippled through the room as he laid out the truth. Names were spoken aloud. Documents passed from hand to hand. Faces tightened. Some looked angry. Others looked ashamed. A man in the back scoffed and asked if he expected them to give everything back. Elias paused. He remembered the firelight, the shared warmth, the way survival had nothing to do with ownership. "I want us to stop pretending we didn't know," he said, "and start deciding who we want to be now." The room fell quiet. Change didn't arrive like thunder. It came like dawn, slow, uneven, undeniable. Committees formed. Conversations continued long after the hall emptied. It wasn't perfect, but it was movement. For the first time in years, Elias slept without the weight of unfinished truth pressing on his chest. Spring found him back in the canyon. He came on foot again, not because he had to, but because it felt right. He brought supplies, tools, and letters, written commitments from the town, imperfect but real. He didn't know if the sisters would be there. The land didn't know him that. But the fire was burning when he arrived. Tala looked up first, her expression unreadable. Niall followed, smiling softly as if she'd known he would return all along. "You listened," Tala said after he spoke. "I tried," Elias replied. They sat together as the sun dipped low, not as savior or judge, but as people bound by shared truth. Elias realized then that freedom wasn't granted, it was practiced. Again and again. In how you show up. In how you carry history forward without letting it chain you. That night, they shared stories instead of survival. Laughter replaced the wind. The canyon felt lighter. Years later, travelers would speak of the canyon with reverence. They said the storms still came, fierce and unforgiving, but fewer people faced them alone. Agreements were honored. Voices once ignored were heard. The land, while scarred, breathed easier. Elias never reclaimed a ranch. Instead, he became a bridge between past and present, between people who had learned too late that strength wasn't domination, but responsibility. Sometimes, on cold nights, he wore the braided cord and remembered the words that saved his life. "Shut up, cowboy. You're freezing. You're sleeping between us tonight." It wasn't just about warmth. It never had been. Life will bring storms that strip away pride, comfort, and illusion. In those moments, survival doesn't come from standing taller alone. It comes from listening, sharing warmth, and choosing truth over silence. Freedom begins the moment we stop running and start honoring what and who kept us alive.